Good evening, everybody. Welcome. I am pleased that you're here. If you feel like moving forward, there are some good seats available, some prime seats available, so feel free if you want to move up and join us. I'm David Woolson. I'm President and CEO of the Walla Walla Valley Chamber of Commerce, and it is very nice to have you with us for our candidate debate. The role of the Walla Walla Valley Chamber of Commerce is to serve as an advocate and catalyst for our business community as well as the community at large. And we have been doing that for 140 years, although I haven't been there the whole run of the show. Some days it feels like it, but we started in 1875 here in Walla Walla. So we're very proud to be able to present a candidate debate. We have a fairly broad agenda at the Chamber, which includes things like how do we improve our overall business climate and business community. We have several events that we pursue throughout the year. But one of the important things that we do is around our public policy efforts. And the Chamber does not endorse specific candidates, and we will not have an endorsement of any of the candidates. What we try to do with our debates, and we've held several over the years, is really to provide a forum for all the candidates, so you can hear from them directly, and then see who ultimately earns your vote. There is two contested races for Walla Walla City Council, and I'd like to introduce our candidates. For council position 4, our candidates are, to my left, Sharon Schiller and Jerry Cummins. And council position 7, our candidates are Steve Moss and Dominick Elia. And that will be our debate for this evening. First, I want to thank you all for running. You know, it is awfully easy for people simply to complain. You know, and if I was there, they ought to should have. Well, you're not. And these are tough jobs and big responsibilities. And so what I'd like to do is just offer a round of applause for our candidates for getting in the ring. So, a reminder to all of you is that November 3rd is Election Day. Vote. I encourage you. Ballots are actually mailed today, so our debate is timely to hold. So our questions tonight are going to focus around business, economic, business climate type of issues. So there's a more narrow range. We're not going to cover world peace tonight. Maybe if we have time, but we'll see. But they have been submitted by our chamber members and issues that are of concern to them. And so that's kind of what we'll dig into tonight and get your views and how you would approach some things. There's some ground rules for the debate that have been approved by all of our candidates. And just so you understand the format of tonight and how this will work. So each candidate will begin with a 3-minute opening statement that was decided by the candidates, and so everybody's fine with how we're going to do that. These are going to be followed by a series of questions that will be posed to each candidate. The candidates will be given 2 minutes to respond to that question, and their opponent will be given the opportunity to do a 1-minute response or rebuttal. At the end of our members' questions, the candidates will be given the opportunity, if they choose, to ask their opponent a question. And then, the same format, they will be given a 2-minute time to respond, and then an opportunity for a 1-minute response or rebuttal. At the end of our questions, each candidate will have the opportunity to provide a 2-minute closing statement, and the order of that was also determined, and it'll be basically the inverse of how the opening statements work. So you'll see how that plays in a minute. The time limits that I just mentioned will be strictly enforced. We want to move through this. Steve Owens from the Chamber, Steve, will be our timekeeper tonight. And so he will hold up and you will receive a warning when there is 1 minute, when there is 30 seconds, and when time is up. Now, if you keep going from here, Steve, tell them what happens. Now, if you keep going from there, I want to let you know that Steve did play football for the University of Washington. You don't want him to get out of his chair. So we'll, but anyway, you'll have plenty of warning as to when we're kind of getting out of time on a given question. So, I want to ask the audience to be respectful to the candidates and to the event tonight, and remain quiet during the formal Q&A portion of the presentation, and you can applaud and go crazy at the end of our debate, which I welcome you to. It is my pleasure to introduce moderating our debate tonight will be Bob Withycombe, and I appreciate Bob volunteering his time and talent for this important public service. Bob has an incredibly impressive background. For those of you that don't know Bob, he is a retired Whitman professor of rhetoric studies. He retired after 35 years at Whitman. He is the former Humanities Division Chair. He was the Cross-Examination Debate Association National President. He led the debate team there, who was a really unbelievable debate team, quite successful against much bigger schools, and so he is, the Vince Lombardi of debate. His areas of interest are persuasion, social movements, freedom of speech, and civil rights rhetoric, particularly public arguments surrounding police and civil rights workers in the 1960s. Over the years, he was a recipient of all of Whitman's top honors, including a Paul Garrett Fellow Award in '91, the Thomas D. Howell Award for Distinguished Teaching in the Humanities in 2000, Town and Gown Award for Community Service in 2002, Alumni Association Faculty Award for Service in 2009. In 2009, the Carnegie Foundation and the Council for Advancement and Support of Education recognized Bob as the 2009 Washington Professor of the Year, one of only 38 college professors nationwide to be recognized. So would you please join me in welcoming Bob Withycombe.
Thank you, David, and I appreciate the opportunity to get to pose some questions. In a way, it's like being, a college professor doing an exam in which I don't write the exam questions, and I don't even get to grade them because you folks get to help grade them. So the process is exactly the way it was outlined, and I hope I can follow through with the outline. We will begin on my left with Sharon, who gets 3 minutes to provide an opening statement.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Schiller, and I would like to serve you in the capacity of Walla Walla City Council, position number 4, for the term of 2016 through 2019. My interest in city business and government started before I returned to Walla Walla, and I attended a public meeting in December 2009 regarding the closing of the aviary, and I came back to Walla Walla in spring of 2010. I have attended countless city council meetings. Well, not countless, because I do save all of the agendas, so I could count them if I wanted to, and a few work sessions. I believe I have a good overview of the process. I served for 3 years on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. During May of this year, I filed to run in position 4 because I felt that Jerry Cummins needed a challenger. Apparently, so far, a lot of people in this town, my home, believe or have said that I want to, quote, turn back the clock, and that I am a, quote, radical, unquote. But the problem, I shouldn't say the problem, but the differences I have with Mr. Cummins, a very fine man who has served Walla Walla well since 1991, is that we disagree on some things. Mr. Cummins has gone what I believe is way beyond the scope of the position, what the position should be. Oh, gosh. Okay, and pays more attention to statewide issues than local issues. Accomplishments are based on focus, and if your attention and heart is elsewhere, local problems do not get the attention they deserve. Examples of problems: inadequate emergency shelter, Blue Mountain Mall remains undeveloped and unsightly, West Side blight, old corroded water pipes, and adequate sewer and wastewater treatment plant needed for economic growth, and jobs. Now, I am one of the 85% who read the Walla Walla Union Bulletin. Okay, I think that's it for my opening statement.
Thank you, Sharon. Jerry? Could you probably speak more directly into the portable mic? Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for having this forum this evening, and I also want to thank Bob. You've done this for a number of years. I appreciate your willingness to step in again. My comments tonight and throughout my campaign will be centered around my qualifications and my interest to continue on City Council.
I'm so sorry. Now try it.
Test?
Yeah, perfect.
Very good.
Better?
Okay. Thank you. My comments this evening and throughout my campaign will be centered around my qualifications and my interest in continuing on City Council. I have no animosity towards my opponent. I welcome her as an opponent. And one of the things that people always come up to me and say, well, are you upset that you have an opponent? Absolutely not. I'm not upset at all. In fact, I think it has been good for me to go back and to visit some of the issues and the basics that we look at when we look at representing the 31,000 citizens of the city of Walla Walla. If you wanted to brand me in any way, shape, or form, I think you probably should call me a moderate, an individual who is not an extreme person. I'm not partisan, and I don't believe I am radical. I try to weigh my positions and the needs of the citizens and try to provide the services that they can afford to help pay for. If you wanted to look at my biography, I'm a retired educator. I spent 32 years in the Walla Walla school system. 14 years I was a teacher. 18 years I was the vocational director for the Walla Walla Public Schools. I have a baccalaureate degree in business education from Eastern Washington College, now university. I have a master's degree in marketing from the same school. I moved to Walla Walla in 1968. I've raised a family here of 4 daughters. Married, a lot of people may know my wife. I'm married to Lynn, and I have various activities and affiliations within Walla Walla, including the Noon Rotary Club. I belong to AMVETS, past board of directors for the Association of Washington Cities. I am a retired United States Navy, having served both combined active and reserve for 23 years. That's my personal biography, and I look forward to answering the questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Dominick?
Thank you, Bob. I too would like to thank the Chamber and you, Bob, for doing this. I don't remember how many times I've done this with you, but it's been several, and you're always a pleasure to work with. I'd also like to thank you for taking the time and effort to be here this evening. I know there's lots of things going on in the community, and there's other places people could be, but you've chosen to be here because you care about your city, and I really do appreciate that. It's one of the strengths that this community has, is the people and their willingness to work hard to make Walla Walla a better place. I'd like to give you a little bit of a biography. I graduated from DeSales High School in 1974. I was born and raised here, graduated with a degree in accounting from Central Washington University in 1978. Came back home to go to work at Snyder Corselius Paper Company in 1978. 1979, I became a partner. 1985, I became the general manager and continued to serve in that capacity as of at least 4:30 this afternoon when I left. And yes, I did leave early to make sure I was ready for this, so that's not the normal day. I've been involved in a variety of community activities, including my church, St. Francis Catholic Church, the Walla Walla Catholic Schools, the Burlesque Stadium Association, the Downtown Foundation, Walla Walla Housing Authority, and the Chamber of Commerce on the Public Policy Committee, as David mentioned earlier in his opening remarks. Very important group, I think, for the Chamber. I joined that several years ago, and it's been a real pleasure getting to work with that group on both national and state issues, but also I'm able to lend some expertise on the workings of city government because I have a 20-year history of being a council member and a 30-year history of working on the city issues. From my days as a Downtown Foundation board member, I know there are several of you here who remember what downtown looked like 30 years ago. It doesn't look like that anymore, and I'm proud to say I was a leader in that effort. So I've been involved in a variety of issues over the last 30 years, and look forward to continuing to work with you and for you in the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve?
Well, thank you, those in the audience, other candidates, Bob, and thanks to the Chamber. My name is Steve Moss. I lived in the community, city of Walla Walla, going on 43 years. For more than 37 of those years, I worked at the Blue Mountain Action Council. The last 22 years as the Chief Executive Officer. I retired from BMAC just a little over a year ago. My work at Blue Mountain Action Council gave me the opportunity to collaborate with business leaders, leaders from all sectors of the community and the economy, education, social service, health, faith-based, government, and grassroots community groups. The work was always around how can we together meet different community needs. I was born and raised in a small farming town in eastern Oregon. My father owned a retail business in that community, and I learned at an early age the value of hard work, customer service, standing by your word, and most of all, building for the future. I was one of, in our family, I was the first generation to attend college with the support and encouragement of my parents. I did attain a Bachelor's of Science in Sociology from the University of Oregon with a minor concentration in business. While I'm new to politics, I believe that my entire career has given me the kinds of experience to work in the community, to better the community, and the skill of advocating, I think, was one of my strengths. I feel I'm open-minded, I'm a good listener, and I want to take those skills into the City Council and work on your behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the opening comments. And now a series of questions. We'll begin with Sharon and work our way around. Each of the four candidates will address the question, and each will have a chance to respond to the candidate ahead of them. And we'll move progressively around the room so that each person gets a chance at being first and everybody gets a chance at being last. The first question then starts with Sharon. What do you feel is the most significant issue or issues facing the local business community and economy over the next 4 years, the term of a council position, and how do you intend to address these issues?
I believe that the most important issue in this city in the next 4 years probably has to do with income disparity and its effects. Some people are doing very well in the city, and others are struggling very hard. And I have some ideas on how we can help the struggling just kind of fit in better, feel like part of the community, and not feel like, they're kind of lesser beings. The most visible issue, and I'm sure you all are aware, are some people don't have a place to go. They've been homeless, and I know that the county government has been struggling with that issue, and it's not directly a city council issue, a city of Walla Walla issue. It's worked on by the county, but we do, the problem is manifested in the city, within the city limits, especially in the city parks.
Thank you, Sharon. Jerry, you have up to a minute to respond if you would like, but you're also going to answer the same question next.
If I understand this correctly, I respond.
If you choose, yes.
Okay. I don't disagree that we have issues with people who are homeless, and I think that the city should work with a lot of the other agencies that are tasked with helping to that particular population. There's a lot of agencies and organizations that are tasked with that, and the primary agency that receives money and so forth for directing that type of services is the county of Walla Walla. So if I were to look at probably what I felt would be issues that we would be facing in the next 4 years, certainly economic development is one of them. We must support businesses coming in, and we must also support businesses we have existing. I think that the statistics have shown us that those businesses that are here now to grow. My time is up. I apologize.
That's fine, but we're going to come right back to you and give you the entire question to respond to. What do you now feel is the most significant issue facing the business community over the next 4 years, and what are you going to do?
I apologize, Bob. I thought I had moved into that portion of
No
the...
problem. Use whatever portion of the 2 minutes you wish.
Certainly.
And then
Okay.
Sharon will have a minute.
Economic development is one that we need to look at, supporting businesses that already exist in our community, provide family wage jobs, those types of entities. Sharon mentioned the town mall that is in the works. The person that bought that, the agency that bought that, bought it for cash. It's not almost a sham like it had been before, but it was being protected by various bank loans. This has been bought outright by Selman Associates out of California. They will be opening up the mall in the fourth quarter of 2016. The next issue that I think would be facing the city would be infrastructure repair, and I think all of you know what I'm talking about. It would be replacing leaky sewer lines, replacing water pipes and lines that need to be fixed, and also our streets. Right now, we're putting $4.6 million into street repair and water and sewer replacement, and that needs to continue. And if anything, maybe we could even include a little bit more money for that. The third one that I'm going to mention this evening is public safety. I think that all people in Walla Walla need to feel safe. I think that we have seen a rise or a more gang-related activities in our community, and I think that plays very poorly with our citizens and also plays very poorly with our business environment. So I think that we would need to look at that, and I also, in conjunction with that, I support the 4 new police positions that we have, which will be put towards public safety.
Thank you. Sharon, you now have a minute to respond as you wish.
Okay, I agree with a lot of things that Mr. Cummins says, and he mentioned public safety, and I think that our police force in the city is doing a knockout job. They also have the responsibility of being mental health first responders. If maybe people didn't know that, but the mental health crisis team does not come in the city limits. I feel that the best that they can do, and they have been doing it, is police presence, bodily presence. But I really don't like all the surveillance videos and things like that. I think they don't really do any good. They make it easier maybe to check up when something bad happens, but personally I would rather just see the policeman on the street.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll switch to position 7. Dominick, you get the question. What do you feel is the most significant issue facing the local business community over the next 4 years, and how would you respond?
Okay. By going third on this, it's going to seem a little redundant on some issues, but I think that's okay because I think it just speaks to the amount of time that you spend preparing these things and thinking about them. So my number 1 is public safety. If people do not feel safe, you cannot have a positive business environment. And I think we've seen that to some degree downtown, where some of the homeless folks have taken over some of the areas, and the businesses near them have been affected drastically. So that's got to be the number 1 issue, because people need to feel safe. And that's not only police, it's also fire. When we talk about public safety, a lot of times we just talk about police. Community policing, I think, is something that's very important. It's something I'm proud to say that we instituted when I was on the council the first time. And it's your policemen trying to get to know the people in a given area so that they trust them, they know their habits, they know what they do, and it's much easier for them to spot something out of the ordinary if they know what ordinary is. So that's number one. Number two, I'll be a little different, is the budget. I have 20 years experience of working on that budget, including 14 years as the chair of the finance committee for 5 different mayors. And that's by request, and I'm proud of that each of those folks asked me if I would serve in that capacity. I think I did it well. The city budget's extremely large, extremely complex, and it takes some really special skills and talents to be able to use that document. It's the ultimate policy document. The council in that document sets their policy, and those policies drive the work plan for the employees. So we need to continue to work hard on that budget and understand that every time a tax or a fee goes up, that has a cumulative effect on the citizens. And as it does, including the businesses, and as it does, the citizens have less money to spend. Some taxes are good and beneficial. Others, we need to be aware of the cumulative effect.
Thank you. Steve, you have a minute to respond to that if you wish.
Well, thank you. And again, crime, I believe, is an issue. Most specifically, I'm concerned about the gang issues that have sprung up again. When we had those come about 8 or 10 years ago, and the judges were, and the police were very strict with the law, they seemed to go away. At the same time, they were simmering, and if you don't start to attack prevention, I believe that they will continue. Growing homeless was mentioned. Mental health, I do believe that we have mental health people in the community. Urban growth boundary issues, infrastructure, obviously, the water sewer lines. Economic development is important, but I think it's more important to retain the jobs that we have. It's very difficult to draw new businesses into the community.
Thank you. And now it's actually your turn to address the complete question. What do you think the most important issue is, and how do you choose to address it?
Can you just ring my bell? Because I wondered why.
I don't know that I've ever heard anyone say, "Could you ring my bell?" But we will do our best.
I got caught up in the format myself. Let me go back and start with. I think the most important thing is that we collaborate, that we work with all of the various groups in the community to come up with a systematic approach to dealing with our issues. Just looking through the audience, and I recognize many of you, either from business or other aspects of my life in the community, and I know that we have an opportunity to address issues in a very systematic and thoughtful fashion. We do have crime issues, we have mental health issues, we have homeless issues, we have education issues. If you look at Walla Walla, we mirror the rest of the country, or vice versa, just on a little different scale. Every one of us in the community has an opportunity to work together from a little different angle to make Walla Walla a better place. But we have to address current issues at the same time, look to the future, and look at the young people that are coming up to make sure that they have the knowledge, the skills, and the ability to make Walla Walla a better place in 20 or 30 years.
Thank you. And Dominick, you have a minute to respond if you would like.
Okay. Difficult to respond. There was a whole variety of issues there. I think most of them I don't disagree with Steve. We have a variety of issues. I think we just maybe disagreed on what the highest priority ought to be, but they're priorities nonetheless. The one thing I'd like to expand on just a little bit is economic development was mentioned. I have worked on that in cooperation with the Port of Walla Walla for about 20 years now. And one of the pieces that was mentioned, I believe, by Mayor Cummins, one of the pieces that was missing, I thought, in that economic development piece was local business. And it was mentioned earlier, but I would like to think I kind of took a lead in the piece to get them to include that local businesses can expand, and we need to protect what's here. We need to grow the pie, not just add to the pie. So it's really important for the businesses that are here and any who are thinking of coming that the pie get bigger. It can't stay the same size and just be split up more.
Thank you. The next round of questions, we'll start with Jerry. This is a chamber debate which has the business community as members. What is your own business or economic development experience that you would bring to the City Council?
Basically, as a school teacher or a school administrator, I was employed in the public sector. However, as a administrator for 18 years, I did maintain a several $1 million budget that I was responsible for. I was a grant writer. I was a very successful grant writer, and I think I pride myself on those things that I was able to do. I think one of the things that I've learned in 30 years in Rotary, I've associated with a lot of the private sector people and people who belong to the chamber, and I think I understand what their motives are and the direction that they would like to move their businesses. So let me stop there. I have not owned a business, and I'm from the public sector.
Sure, you have a minute to respond if you wish.
Yes, my private business experience has a sum total of about 12 years. I did a lot of secretarial work in the beginning of my career. The largest time I spent in one private company was at Cater Air International, and I was a billing office manager. This was located in Portland International Airport, and I served from 1988 to 1993, and that included billing airlines for catering services rendered and compiling financial statements and helping the manager do budgets.
Thank you. And Sharon, you now have 2 minutes to expand on that and explain your business and economic development background and what you bring to City Council, as you wish.
Okay. Yes. Way back there when I worked at Cater Air International, and my second career, by the way, was in nursing, and that started after 1999. So I'm kind of a two-career person. I've had a broad educational background, and even in nursing, I had supervisory experience. But they are two very different worlds. Of course, in the private sector, you're striving for efficiency and making a profit, and you get praised at being very productive, and that's good. I think that we need both business and the public sector. They go hand in hand. We can't have one without the other. And we, of course, as I was going to mention before, somebody at the Union Bulletin argued that we were a laissez-faire economy, and I heartily disagree. We are a mixed economy, combining public and private efforts, and we couldn't do without either one. Thank you.
And Jerry, you have a minute if you wish.
Thanks, Bob. I think we're probably all making a little bit of sausage with the way we're responding on this. So let me just maybe add something that I forgot maybe to mention, and that was for myself and my own background as far as working with the private sector. As a vocational teacher and as a vocational administrator, I worked for 25 years to help youth in the secondary school system prepare for the world of work. And in that position, I worked with a lot of employers to place some of the students we had who went into the workforce. So I'm very proud of the association I had with those businesses in working with entry-level employment for the students that I had at the high school.
Dominick, the question is now yours. What economic business experience do you bring to the council?
I went first last
Yes.
time. Do it again?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I've been a chamber member for, I believe, the entire 40 years that I've been in the public sector, private sector rather, here. 35 years, I guess. My first few years I was a farmer with my dad trying to pay for my college education. And since I mentioned earlier, 1978, I've been at Snyder Crusaders Paper Company. I believe we've been a chamber member that entire time, if I'm not mistaken. We've had some level of activity with the chamber, but I have 40 years of private business experience. I've done it since I was 17 years old, and I continue to do it today. The business that we run has been there since 1913, so it's a long-standing Walla Walla tradition, over 100 years. We continue to operate it today, and hopefully we'll continue to operate it into the future. So again, I've done the things that we need to continue to do in the private sector. Very, very different than the public sector or the quasi-public sector. And so I'm very different than my opponent in that regard.
Thank you. Steve, you have a minute to respond, and then you will get the question.
Well, I don't know if you're referring to the Blue Mountain Action Council as quasi-public. We are a private not-for-profit corporation. We operated about a $6 million budget on average. I did that as a CEO for 22 years. Very, very few of those dollars are ever guaranteed. We had 65 different funding sources that we would go after, and we worked with thousands of people in the community. I had 45 employees, so I dealt with many of the issues that any private business would deal with.
Okay, and now I guess you get to be upfront about your business and economic development experience and what specifically that brings to the council.
Sure. So my business experience, as I mentioned, my father owned, it was a Firestone dealer store. He was the sole proprietor. And so not only did I start to learn about business on a nightly basis, beginning about age 7 or 8, but when I was 12 or 13, I was putting bicycles together, dusting, doing inventory, going on buying trips, those kinds of things through my high school years. I also worked throughout high school at the local theater as the projectionist, which has been one of my lifelong passions of watching movies, I think. But all of those jobs started me out, as I said, with a keen understanding of private sector and how that works. Like I say, Blue Mountain Action Council, a private not-for-profit business. I work for a board of directors of 12 community members that helped me set goals, priorities every year, lived within those budgets, did all the hiring and firing, or I was responsible for all that. We literally have worked with hundreds of people that were placed into private sector jobs in our communities over the years. Through on-job training, I worked with Walla Walla Community College to establish several training programs there for people to enter the workforce. I even worked several with Mayor Cummins over the years and was proud to see those young people stay in school, get their education so they could enter the workforce and be productive.
Thank you. Dominick, you have a minute to respond as you wish.
I think those things that my opponents worked on are all important. They're good for the community, but they are not private sector experience.
Thank you. Then the third question, we will start with you, Dominick. And we've already sort of talked around the edges, and I think everyone has hinted at it, so I will ask you to be as specific as possible. The question goes like this. There has been a conflict between the business community and our growing homelessness issue and population, especially downtown. Several businesses have had significant problems with trespassing, public urination and sexual acts, drug usage and paraphernalia, and other issues. The Chamber has also received numerous comments from visiting tourists. The homelessness issue is complex. What would be your approach to address this issue and also mitigate the negative impact on our businesses? And again, please be specific.
Tough question. Been a variety of folks working on that topic for many, many, many years, and I'm not sure we've come to a good solution. I know we haven't. Some of the things I think we need to do is continue to be partners with the county. As has been mentioned, the county is the lead on the homeless issue. That's where the funding sources go and those kind of things. As a city, we have to be a partner in that because it obviously impacts us probably more than it does the unincorporated portion of the county. So we need to be involved in that. As far as specific things, I think the ambassador approach that's been taken downtown is a positive one, trying to get to know some of those folks and trying to understand their issue. Many of them, as was mentioned in the question, have mental health issues or drug and alcohol addiction problems. Those are very difficult because the current providers that have rules don't allow those folks to participate in their programs if they continue to have that kind of behavior. So it makes it more difficult, but I think we need to recognize it, and I guess I'm not smart enough to come up with a specific solution right now. I would continue to work with the folks that are working on it, but I don't have a good answer, and I'm not afraid to admit that because it's a nationwide problem, and I don't think anybody's had a real good answer to this point. So, thank you.
Steve, you have a minute to respond if you wish.
Well, I think there are proven methods of addressing issues. They do take time, they take collaboration, they take money, and they take the will to address. We do have a growing population of people in the community that are homeless or in and out of periodic employment that cause concern for people in the downtown area. And I guess I don't know that those issues have been worked on for years. I know in the last several years there have been some concerted efforts to focus on the downtown issues. There has been a collaboration, a coalition of people that have met around homelessness for years, but just in the last 5 or 6 years has some of the funding streams from the public come together with private funding streams to address.
And now you get to take 2 minutes to be as specific on homelessness downtown as you can, or as you wish.
Well, and last summer, the spring of 14, there was a groundswell of concern around specific people downtown. The police department and the county called several meetings. I attended some of those. I know the city was involved in that. The Downtown Alliance, the Chamber, the Wine Alliance, police department, both city and county, and many social service organizations and education. We got together and there are a lot of misunderstandings about the homeless. And so you need to not only understand what you're dealing with, but also dispel a lot of the misunderstandings about the homeless as well. And so we went about trying to do both of those, looking at who were the people, where were they hanging out, why were they there and hanging out, and then what could we do to address it. And so that was one of the outcomes, this ambassador program. That's just a start. You need to have a continuum of services. And what I mean by that, there are some people that, because of their substance abuse, their mental health issues, their traumatic stress issues, they are not going to fall into traditional kinds of services. We need to take a look at how we can provide for them. I am very proud of the fact that now I've been working for the last 8 years, and it's about to come to fruition, but we will see, I believe in the next year to year and a half, the opening of a community center for youth that will include a homeless youth shelter. And so that's one way that the community will be and can respond.
Thank you. Dominick, you have a minute if you wish to use it.
Okay, I guess I would just like to say I know Steve's worked on this issue for a long, long time. I appreciate the time and effort he's put in and the progress that they've made.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Steve. It's rather long, but not particularly complicated. We're an economy of small businesses. 85% of the chamber membership has 10 or fewer employees. As a result, our business community is very sensitive to regulations, fees and assessments, levies by all levels of government. In the past, the city has considered new fees or regulations aimed specifically at businesses and commercial property owners. This is a significant concern for the members of the chamber. What would be your approach or policy criteria to consider new fees, taxes, regulations, etc., that specifically impact the business community?
Well, first of all, you need to understand the economy at the time. The nation is just starting to come out of the Great Recession. However, in a herky-jerky fashion, we've created a lot more jobs, but many of those jobs are lower wages than the jobs that were lost in 2007, 2008. Walla Walla seems to lag behind, and maybe communities of our size and rural communities always lag behind. So we didn't see the hit quite as early, but we're probably not going to gain quite as fast either. My recollection is the number of jobs that we have in Walla Walla County mirrors that of about 10 years ago. We're just getting back up to that level. I might be off by a year or two. All that to say is that jobs are the driver in the community. We have to have employers to employ those people. I would be very reticent to impose fees without fully understanding and vetting those with the chamber, other community groups, to get at least their impact and a feel on what that impact is going to have. The other thing I'd want to make sure is the value of that fee going to offset any reduction in employment or backlash that might occur.
Dominick.
Can I go straight to my 2 minutes?
If you wish.
Yeah, that's fine. Again, I think it's an issue of having done it. I have worked with the policy committee at the chamber for the last 4 years, and two of the issues that came to us with recommendations to go to the chamber board, number one was a business license fee. The city, to their credit, came and talked about it, asked what the feeling of the business group was, and I and several other business folks who serve on that, I think, suggested to the board loud and clear that we weren't interested. And for a variety of reasons. Number one, the business license fee is kind of a slippery slope. Once you hit on that, the parameters on it are not very wide. You can do a lot of things from the perspective once they start it, and I think that was a real concern of the group. The second one was a fee for fire inspection. That was also another issue that the Public Policy Committee recommended to the board that we suggest the city not implement it. It was a situation where, again, the background a little bit, the city came and said it was a top priority. I understand that, but they had just adopted a budget that expanded services in other areas and then came to the business community and said this was their top priority. My suggestion, I think the Public Policy Committee agreed, if it was your top priority, you should have funded it before you expanded other services.
Steve, you have a chance to respond if you wish.
Well, I think you're talking about communications, and I believe I addressed that. Open and early communication is key.
Thank you. Somehow I failed to give Sharon and Jerry an opportunity to talk about homelessness, and I suspect that's a really bad thing, and I do want them to address the question of homelessness, and then we will come back and talk about taxes and fees. So, Jerry, you get to start this one. What would be your approach to the question of homelessness? How do you mitigate the impact, particularly on the business community?
Certainly. And I want to make sure that people understand that I understand the fact that homelessness is a problem and an issue in our country. Having been a veteran of the military, realizing that 7% of Americans are veterans, but 20% of the homeless are veterans, which means that a lot of veterans are those people who are homeless. And that's meaningful to me. I listened to what the people from the other position had to say. I agree with the ambassador program. I think that has been very good. One of the things that I would tell you this evening that I will support is I think that we need to look at a way of having bathroom facilities open for those people who need them. I think if we had some type of facilities for people to use downtown at night, then I don't think we may have the mess and so forth that you mentioned in asking the specific question. The face of homelessness also is an issue. We think of homelessness, sometimes people think of the lady that's sitting in the back of a car with 2 kids in the back and she's just been evicted from her house. We also have the face of homelessness of the people that have a sobriety, a drug, a mental health issue, PTSD, all of those types of issues that are afraid or do not want to reach out to get the services that they could possibly take. So there's a wide variety and a degree of what we have in the face of homelessness. I support the nonprofit organizations that probably have a little more expertise than I do, and I think it is a collaborative effort that we must do.
Thank you. Sharon, you now have a minute to respond and then 2 minutes to make your own direct response to the question of homelessness.
The approaches so far, we've heard that everybody's been working on it really hard, but the problem is this winter there still is not an emergency shelter for the really tough ones to house. We could have them on a waiting list. And I think we have no other real solution to keep people from freezing and getting sick. Being out in the winter is to support the private efforts of the Madison Park volunteers, because we have no other choice. The county their goal is to house the chronically homeless by December 2016. And that means that they're, yes.
And now you do have 2 minutes to make your statement.
Okay.
Specifically.
All right. This is kind of an emotional issue for me because, well, for one thing, my father kind of went from shelter to shelter in his later life in this town, and he did use the shelters available, but there are some that want to camp out, and I am very grateful for the efforts of the Warming Center, and that's a combination of a private effort plus the county emergency services. But the only problem with them is they're only open when it gets like really, really cold. And the way that a lot of people are that live in the parks, they just kind of go day by day, and we should not disparage them. We've got to just have access for them. When the weather gets bad, don't say, well, it's your fault. You know, you should have been doing this and this and this. You should have been going by our rules. No, that's not good enough. I don't want to see anybody freeze in this town. I don't want to see anybody suffer. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Jerry. You have 1 minute on that if you wish.
I'll pass my 1 minute.
Thank you. We're now going to do the business tax regulation to this council position. So we'll start with Sharon. Business regulations, taxes, fees, assessments are problematic and concern business in town. They concern the members of the Chamber of Commerce. How would you approach them? What would be your standards for policy decisions on taxes, fees, and regulations that specifically impact the business community?
I am kind of I would call it a moderate person in the fact that I like to see regulations be at the very minimum. But we have to look at fulfilling our responsibilities as a government to the people in this town, including the low-income people. And I like to see businesses not be hindered with any additional regulations. I don't have that much to say about regulating businesses unless it has to do with public safety, aesthetics, equal opportunity, or fairness. Otherwise, let people go and let them make their money and let them dream. I'm very pro-business. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. You have a minute to respond, and then you will have 2 minutes to make your own statement.
I would pass on my rebuttal if I could and move right into my personal statement. I understand the question. I know that last year the city worked on, and we spent about 3 months discussing in work sessions about having beginning with a $25 license fee, realizing that there's always a concern that $25 could certainly escalate to a higher amount. That primarily was to help for fire inspections, and then we were also going to charge a fire inspection fee. When that was brought to our attention that the Chamber of Commerce and the members of the Chamber of Commerce had some issues with that, we did meet. We talked about it. We stepped back. We did not pursue that. We did not continue it because of the request of the Chamber that they felt it would not be a fair fee to place on businesses at the time that we were having the issue of recovering from the 2008 economy drag. I think that the issue we have to do is I think we have to listen. I think we have to communicate with each other and look at ways that we can work collaboratively together. And with that, then I'm going to toss out a challenge that we have for the future. And one of the things we have is a vacation rental issue in this town. We have a lot of people that are using vacation rentals, and those vacation rentals are not being inspected. We don't know if they meet codes and so forth for overnight housing and accommodations. We don't know if any of those, can't even identify where they are at because there's no way of telling who has a vacation rental because we do not have any type of a licensing fee. So my challenge is right now to the Chamber is let's work collaboratively together to work out a way that we can regulate or we can make sure that vacation rentals serve well.
Thank you. Sharon, you get the last minute on this topic.
Well, I agree with Jerry on the two subjects that he brought up. Thank you.
Perfect. Moving on to the next question. This time we will start with Sharon. Washington State has been ranked as one of the 10 least business-friendly states in the country. Do you believe that Walla Walla is business-friendly, and if so, why? If you believe we are unfriendly, What should you do to address this issue?
I would only say that the business environment is kind of unfriendly to the lower income people. And what I would do is, one thing that comes to mind is expanding our regional bus system, because a lot of people that are lower income like to travel by bus. And I think we could get a lot of tourists in here that would really love to see Walla Walla and really enjoy it, that can't afford to fly in. And a lot of adventurous types of people like to take the bus, including students, and we have a lot of students here. But the only problem is in the wintertime, if they don't have a ride and they don't use Uber, they have to stand out in the cold and at the Valley Transit Center if they don't have a way of if they don't have a shelter nearby. And that's why I think we should have a regional bus station where people can be comfortable. And I think it would make the economics in this town really improve. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. You have a minute to respond, and then you get the question.
Okay, I would like to pass on my rebuttal to what Sharon said and go directly into the question. Yes, we are a regressive state. I think we have a business and occupation tax which causes problems for our business community. We have a regressive taxing process and structure. We also have a business recruitment process that is not as the same as other states. We have a very difficult time recruiting businesses and being able to provide to them the infrastructure that they need to get up and running in your particular state. And when you are competing with other states who offer a lot more economic development and capital outlay value to a business, then they will go to that state, and that state doesn't have the regressive tax structure that we have. Give you an example of one that we are going to look at is the largest taxpayer in the county of Walla Walla is Boise Cascade. They pay $442,000, I believe, a year in taxes to the county because of the carbon tax credit that the governor has is in the process of putting in place on executive order. There's a possibility that Boise Cascade will in fact want to leave our state. That's a very regressive thing for our state. It's very regressive to our county, and it's very regressive to our taxpayers, because that will cause our personal property taxes to go up to make up for the tax loss if they were to leave. So,
thank you, Sharon. You get the last minute on this question if you want.
Yes, that is a very concerning statement by Mr. Cummins, and I would hope that we have a really strong person in our state legislature. This is just I don't mean to be snotty, but you know, I know we have to work with the state, the city council people, and especially the mayor. But we do have to make sure we focus on things within the city limits first that are very urgent. And I know Chamber of Commerce is all about business and taxes, and a lot of the things are either state or federal, which is fine to be informed and involved. But we really got to take care of home base first. And thank you very much.
And now position 7, Dominick, are we business unfriendly? Or if we are, what should we do to solve that? Or are we friendly?
Well, I think in this case, perception's reality, folks. Survey after survey after survey says that the city government is not business friendly. having worked with it as long as I have, I don't feel quite as strongly as some folks because I guess I have a better idea of how to get some of those things done and who to talk to and where to go. So I don't feel it's to the same degree. During my time on the council, I was always frustrated trying to make sure that we weren't seen as unfriendly to business. Part of the issue, as was mentioned in the question, is our friends at the state. When you're set up with a regressive system like we have, it filters down to our business. And when it does, they have a tendency to take it out on those who are closest to them. We're the ones that they see at the grocery store. We're the ones that they see at church. We're the ones they see walking down the street. So they don't call Governor Inslee. They don't call their state legislators as much, although those folks I know do get a lot of input from folks here at home when they're here. But much of that agenda, frankly, is driven by the West Side folks. And it creates problems for our businesses here. Our B&O tax that was mentioned, our state industrial levels are high. We just had to increase our state industrial considerably because of the new rules relative to healthcare. We had chosen to not be included in state industrial as owners of the business. Now with the new healthcare laws, those have been eliminated by the insurance companies. Now we're paying over $2,000 a year so we can be covered by state industrial. So those are all things that help people perceive that we are unfriendly, even though those are at a level beyond us. It's things that cumulatively add up, and people just continue to feel that push and feel that they have the best avenue to talk to their local folks.
Thank you, Steve. You have a minute to respond, and then you get 2 minutes to direct yourself to the question.
Well, I'll just go right into the issue, if I may. I feel mixed about this because Washington State has a much lower unemployment rate than the state. But again, as has been mentioned, a lot of that is on the west side. So we're a little bit at a disadvantage because we are rural and we don't have the diversity, we don't have as much high-tech industry. I do agree that the business and occupation tax, it's a pretty regressive tax. It's been challenged many times. I don't know, other than taking that to the legislature, what we're going to be able to do about it. I certainly would be willing to work on behalf of that. I hope that the legislature will step in and work with the governor so he isn't able to just unilaterally impose some of those rules. At the same time, we do want clean air and clean water, so hopefully there are compromises to be found there. One of the things that I think we can do locally, again, is continue to provide education and retraining both for our current workers and knowing that we have very few incentives through the state of Washington to attract businesses, especially in comparison to our neighbor states. Idaho is an example. I think we need to understand that we need to have a trained workforce and work with our community colleagues and work with our school system to ensure that as businesses are looking to relocate or expand, that we have the labor that they need.
And Dominick, you have a minute if you wish to use it.
Okay, thank you. Not necessarily rebuttal, but a little bit more addition, I guess. One of the other areas that has been difficult is our development climate. That's one that when I was on the council I heard over and over and over again. I'm trying to do a development, all they do is tell me no. And I think it's really important for the city to be perceived as helping people be able to say yes. I'm not suggesting they break the rules. I'm not suggesting they do things differently for one person than another. But people normally, when they go in and try and go through that development process, are trying to do things right. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to try and help them, steer them towards what is right, let them ultimately make the decision. It's their capital and their investment. But to just, I think we were perceived quite regularly as just, they just tell me no, tell me to come back when I have a new proposal. And I know we have a new development director, and maybe those things have been rectified, but I know that was an issue in the past and may continue to be an issue, and why somebody doesn't like to be told what they can and can't do with their property, which I understand there's rules.
Thank you. The next round of questions begins with Jerry. The Walla Walla region suffers from a fairly flat economic growth condition, and our population growth is also flat. Do you see this as a problem? How do we promote economic growth in a stagnant region? What should be the City Council's role in economic development, and what plans do you have to promote a strong local economy?
I think that the council has a role for economic development. I think that we need to support businesses that want to grow. I think we need to support the economic agency that's responsible for economic growth, which is the Port of Walla Walla. I think we have to work with as many partners as we can. I think we have to drop the fact of geographic border, the artificial borders that we have geographically between our jurisdictions, and ask businesses who want to come to the area, or when we're recruiting businesses, what area would be best for them to locate in, and then help that jurisdiction land that particular entity. As far as we need to grow our economy, our median family income is probably $18,000 below the state medium income level, and we need to get family wage jobs in this community to retain our current employment base, and to also retain our youth that's leaving to go to other places to find and seek employment. So it is a partnership, and we need to work collaboratively together to make that partnership work.
Thank you. Sharon, you have a minute to respond to Jerry, and then you get to answer the question about business growth.
I agree with everything Jerry says, and I'll move on to my own my own comments. One of the things on my wish list, I had learned in my calling around the different departments in the city that our wastewater treatment center has some limitations. And, you know, being one that remembers the good old days of Rogers Cannery and other food processing plants, which I thought were very appropriate to have around here because we're an agricultural community. I found out that we can't have food processing plants because of the capacity of our wastewater treatment plant. So I guess my wish list is that we do a cost-benefit study on the wastewater treatment facility center so we can increase our, if some food processor would come like they did 3 years ago and we had to turn them away because our wastewater facility was so, I'm not really sure what's the matter with it, but we could do a study on it. Thank you.
Jerry, you have a minute to respond if you wish.
Thank you. I will respond to this particular issue. The wastewater treatment plant, to my knowledge, is not at capacity. In fact, at one time we invited the city of College Place to use our extra flow in our water treatment plant because we had excess availability. As far as food processing plant 3 years ago, I'm really not aware of what particular one that would be. The one that came before was the juicing company that we brought in from New York, and they are here at the old plant down on Reese Avenue. We have a wonderful water treatment plant. We have the capacity to add businesses if they locate in Walla Walla, in my opinion.
Thank you. Same question to this council position. Dominick, how would you promote economic growth in a stagnant community?
I think we need to continue to work with a variety of our partners. The Chamber, I think, does a good job, and the city went together with them when we were working on the streets and roads and talked about buying local. I am always amazed about folks who have local businesses, but yet tend to purchase a majority of their items that could be purchased locally out of town. I don't see how they can not see the disconnect between their actions and their words. They don't want folks doing that to them, and they turn around and do it to others. And that bothers me. I'm a local business person. I try and support the local businesses where I possibly can. Sometimes you can't, and that I understand, but we try and do the best we can to make sure that happens. And I think a lot of that growth can happen internally, because the growth on dollars that are spent here generate a lot more revenue than dollars that are spent elsewhere. We always get back some of it in some way, shape, or form, but the number of times that a local dollar is multiplied far exceeds the amount that is multiplied when you're purchasing either from a non-local, we'll put it that way, business. So I think it's really important that we walk the talk. We need to do that, each and every one of us, the best we can. And I think the business community's been very supportive, I know, of our business, and that's what's kept us going for as long as it has. So I think we need to work hard on the local business and continue to support them in any way we can while recruiting them and trying to grow the pie. Again, I'm really big on that. Our recruiting efforts have to focus on someone who makes the economic pie in the valley larger. It can't just split it up in additional ways, and that unfortunately happens often.
Thank you, Steve. You have an opportunity for a minute to respond, and then your answer to the question.
Well, I certainly agree, Dominick, that, and I understand growing up in a household where my father depended on people buying locally, and he in turn would buy local. It made sense then, and it still makes sense. But one of the issues you need to have is you need to have local businesses selling things that people want to buy. Now, the city has done a nice job. I think it's taken longer than anybody would have hoped. But when the new mall is repurposed, we brought in other businesses because of the tourist industry. But there are ways to market that. So I'm in agreement with that. We have been growing. We grow at a very nominal, about 1% per year. We have done so for many, many years. We had a little growth spurt in the 90s. It's a complex issue because I think there are some people in our community that like the size, like the current mix of lack of traffic and ease of maneuvering and those kinds of things.
Let me get back on schedule here. You have 2 minutes to make. You did the response. Now you have 2 minutes to do your own formal statement on growth.
Well, I was giving
a
a little bit of background on that, so I just rushed right into that, Bob. My apologies. But you do need to have a concerted effort and a plan, and the more people that you can get around that plan, I think the better. We have some attractions that we need to work on. We have a robust health industry that I think we can bring people, especially retirees. We need to take a look at our land use planning policies. You mentioned the development issues, and I believe the city has made strides toward improving the development process over the years, and I understand and shared in some of that frustration from time to time as we were developing properties in Walla Walla. So having more retail, knowing what our strengths are with our businesses, how we can attract people around that, the land use issues. The infrastructure is very, very important, and the city has, I think, done a great job of beginning to replace failing infrastructure. It's only a beginning, and we'll have to work out ways to continue that and not overburden the taxpayer.
Thank you, Dominick. You get the last minute.
Thank you. Agree with almost everything Steve said. I think this is an issue where we have pretty common agreement amongst all of us, actually. The one thing I guess I'm kind of excited about, it's that growing the pie piece. The Port's new venture downtown for the recruitment that they've done, and those are the kind of things that help make the pie bigger. Those are good paying jobs, not a lot of people, but it helps set the tone for that retail environment. I think part of the reason we haven't seen that mall developed is that there really is not a sufficient retail base here to justify some of those larger businesses. We've talked about Costco for years and years and years, and everybody, oh, it's next month, it's next month, it's next year. We aren't big enough. We do not have enough retail dollars to spend for them to be here. They have a long list of places to go that far exceed our per capita income, far exceed our total income, and those are some of the things that are driving those larger retailers to make the decisions not to be here, and I think that's part of the reason the mall's having the issue of not moving forward.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Dominick. This time it's his turn, and this is one where I suspect there will be very little overlap. Dominick, describe your greatest career success and your biggest career defeat.
Let me start with the defeat. As most of you know, I was the owner of Dominick's on the Runway, a restaurant right down the hall. It had been a dream of my family's since I was in college to own our own restaurant. I was fortunate enough to have a wife and a son who are both extremely talented along that way, and I was along for the ride performing some of the business functions, if you will. I negotiated the lease and did the insurance and all those behind the scenes things that have to get done. I applied for the job as chief taste tester, but they told me I wasn't qualified, so I just did what I could to help in that regard. So that's definitely and that sticks in my craw to this day, and probably I will take it to my grave. For a variety of reasons, it did not succeed. We had to pull the plug on it, and I guess to that degree it was a success, because sometimes you have to realize that what you're doing is not going to work, and we did that and made the very, very tough decision to close it. Greatest business success, I would say being able to continue operation of a business that was over 70 years old when I went to work there. It's passed through, it's never been family operation, but it's like family because there's very few of us there. We know each other, we know each other's kids and those things. And to be able to perpetuate that in this community has some real value to me. We've rehabbed a historic building on Main Street. It was the old Walla Walla Valley Railway. We did a rehab in 1988. And I was proud to be the general manager and to oversee that, because I think that's one of the things that we can offer as a community because of our length of time that we've been here compared to a lot of the other communities that are newer, because you can't create history. Lots of places have tried and you can replicate it, but you can't create it.
Steve, you have an opportunity to now tell Dominick where he went wrong and then to express your own greatest successes and your greatest defeat.
Well, I think that we only have successes because we have defeats. And if you don't try, you aren't going to succeed. I've had some defeats, maybe too numerous to discuss. I got convinced to go into a business with my brother, who's deceased now, but in airplane leasing business, and that proved to be an exciting 6 years that turned into quite a defeat. My successes, I think I look back on my 37 years at Blue Mountain Action Council, most specifically the 22 years that I was the CEO. When I took over, there were several poor business decisions that had been made that while I was aware of, I was not aware of the severity. It took me 3 or 4 years to get things straightened away. But I was able to do that with the help of my board of directors and my staff, and I'm very proud of position that I left the company in, and the ability for Blue Mountain Action Council to help people well into the future.
Dominick, you have a minute to respond if you wish.
All I'd say is it's a great organization. I'm glad it's still there. They do a lot of good work in the community, and Steve was certainly a part of that.
Thank you. Now this turn. Sharon, your greatest career success and your largest career defeat?
I will start with the defeat. And it was actually started with great ambition because I was making $9 an hour at Cater Air International as a billing office manager. And I thought, heck, you know, I want to go to nursing school because they pay twice or three times that amount. And I could support my children by myself. And the problem was, well, for one thing, I had to borrow a lot of money to go to nursing school because they usually just give you financial aid for your first bachelor's. But when you get a second bachelor's, you have to take out a lot of loans. I got a few scholarships, but and I did really well in nursing school, and I loved it. I love nursing, but the market in healthcare is really tough, and basically I ended up quitting that, and I started using my creative abilities and doing something I wanted to do for a long time, and I had to be poor to do it, and it's been a struggle. But I've been doing writing, and I self-published 2 books, and they are fiction books, and fiction is, you know, the only way to go if you want to have fun, I think. Otherwise, it would be like writing term papers, I think, writing books, writing nonfiction. But they have been self-published, and it's been fun, but it hasn't been profitable. Anyway, but I feel like that is my greatest success, personal success.
Thank you. Jerry, you have a minute to respond, and then your own answer to the question about success and failure.
I would like to pass on my rebuttal, if that's the term I should use. I'm going to be probably a little bit philosophical here. I look at life as stages, and each stage I like to look at it as the positive part of my life, and every stage that I'm in, I think is the best stage that I've ever been in my life. And so I don't like to look back at high school, I don't like to look back in the military, I don't like to look back at a lot of things. But when the first question came out, my first response was, on the positive side, was my family and my children. I'm very, very, very proud of my family, and the fact that I probably even graduated from high school. I was the second person in my extended or immediate family to ever graduate from high school, let alone go to college. So, but to get back to the question, my greatest success was helping students. When I see students on the street, they stop and they talk to me, they look at me and say, "You remember me?" And I always say, "Yes, you sat in the back row by the windows," and they always say, "Yes, they did." But helping students be successful, I think, is my greatest success. And on the opposite side of that, the negative side of that, it's going to be the same thing, except the fact that not being successful with all students. That has always been very difficult.
Thank you, Sharon. You get the last minute on the success or lack of success question.
And I wanted to throw in that I think that my greatest success is raising my 2 children by myself, working full-time, getting very little government assistance. But it's rough. It's rough on them. I think that a 2-parent family household is the ideal. But they both are doing well. They're working full-time. They both have college degrees. And One has a bachelor's degree, the other has a master's degree. I'm very proud of them. And I don't take the credit all myself because I was working full time. And there are other people raising my kids. It was the schools were involved with my kids, and I was involved with the schools and the churches. And that's my greatest success. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is the last question submitted by members of the Chamber. And Steve, it's your turn to begin. Again, the Chamber represents the business community. What should give our members confidence that their interests will be represented and that they should feel comfortable with your leadership on the council?
Well, I think that my past record, hopefully, if anyone knows me, that I'm not quick to rush into things. I like to seek out counsel. I like to listen. I would be respectful of the chamber, but I'll also be respectful of other groups and make sure that whatever decision is made with as much information and with the benefit as many people in the community as possible.
Dominick, you have a minute to respond, and then your own statement on comfort with business communities.
Okay, I'd just like to move to my own statement, if I might. I guess the answer to that is real simple for me. I'm one of you. I've been one of you for a long time. I will continue to be one of you. The struggles, trials, tribulations, and joys that you feel at your business are the same ones that I feel each and every day. I'm going to offer a quote from forget his title now, but Damian Sinnott, when he was at the chamber. He regularly attended our council meetings when I was a member of that council. He finally told me one day, I don't come very often because you always say what I would have said. And I think that pretty well sums up the confidence that you should have in my ability to represent business on that council.
Steve, you have 1 minute to respond if you wish. This side. The chamber represents the business community. Sharon, why do you think that the citizens ought to be comfortable with you as a member of the city council from the business world?
Because I think that business is kind of like the mitochondria of the cell. That's where we get our vitality. The government, even though people don't really like government that much, plays a very important role, because if we did have a laissez-faire economy, what would we do about public safety and the checks and balances that our government gives over our activities, and making this a very good place to live, work, and play, as the city has it as its motto, is what brings people here. It stimulates motivation, ideas, entrepreneurship, and I'm all for that. I'm not a radical that doesn't like business. I might be radical, but I love business.
Jerry, you have a minute, and then your own statement if you wish.
I'll pass on any rebuttal and go straight to my statement. I think that I would hope that my reputation with the business community is that I will listen, and I have listened. I will study the issues, and I will be available to talk to business people. I've been available to talk to the chamber on occasions when they have asked, and I think that I want to be fair. I'm not a radical. I'm not extreme. And I want success, and I'm willing to communicate to get that success.
Sharon, you have the last minute.
I'll pass.
The next is the only question out of the bunch that these people were told in advance they would be given the opportunity. And it's now Sharon's turn to address first the last question. We would like to now give you the opportunity for each of you to ask your opponent a question. Ask them any question that you want. I assume it's about government or business. You will have 2 minutes to state your question and to ask the question. Jerry will have 2 minutes to respond, and then you will have a minute if you wish. So ask away, Sharon.
Okay. Mr. Cummins, you've been on the City Council since 1991, and I believe that the Blue Mountain Mall folded in 1994. And it's been a long road, and they finally got it in the hands of another developer. I was wondering if the stipulations of the sale has anything in it about the city planners being involved in how they develop Blue Mountain Mall, or is it in fact a laissez-faire development?
Thank you. Jerry, you get to answer.
I went on council in 1992, elected 1991, very close, very close. I'm not exactly sure when the Blue Mountain Mall opened, or I'm not sure exactly when it folded. I think it's very important that we realize and recognize, first of all, with the Blue Mountain Mall, that it is a private sector business and not regulated or owned by the city or any other jurisdiction. It's a private sector. It was owned by a bank who took it back for repossession. It was sold by a bank. It's now owned by Selman, who is a private developer. And we, as a city, should and do support his reconfiguration of the mall. And the city manager is in contact with him on a weekly basis, and we are working on getting the businesses lined up that will be there. There will be Hobby Lobby, Famous Footwear, Ultra Cosmetics, Bed & Bath, Ross, TJ Maxx. There will be a family-style restaurant there, and 6 more that I can think of, or 6 more, including large major sporting goods, probably in what's now the Gottschalk building. But that is being developed by the private sector. Everybody thinks that we can regulate, and we actually own the mall, which we do not. We wanted to open up safely. It has to be able to have the health and safety for the people who are in the building. But that is a private sector, and we will support that because it is good for our community. And when we get that mall open, maybe we can stop $170 million of leaving this community every year that's lost to the Tri-Cities by out shopping. That's what our goal is, because part of what we fund our general fund with is sales tax, and that will generate sales tax. We regulate only for health and safety and fire and those types of things, but that's a private sector business, and we need to let that occur.
Chair, you have a minute to respond to his answer if you wish.
To be more specific about my question, Mr. Cummins did say that we regulate for safety, and that would be, to me, it seems like somebody would be stepping in there and making sure that there is safety for the customers. And one thing that came to my mind was the fact that that a lot of parking places in malls, if you don't have the walkway and the pull up type of parking, then you're walking behind cars, and cars, you always have to watch for cars backing up on you, and cars tend to like drive over the parking lot. And I mean that is one of the things I would hope that the city would have some input about. Thank you.
Jerry, you now have the opportunity to ask Sharon a question as you would like.
Yes. Yes, I will. In fact, basically, I would also share with her my written question, so she has it in front of her. 4 major categories that seek general funds from the city from our general fund budget during the budgeting process are economic development, infrastructure repair, public safety, and social services. If, Sharon, you are elected to City Council, you will be involved in prioritizing how general funds are spent. From these 4 items that I have listed, would you please tell us what your top 2 priorities would be and why?
On the list are economic development, infrastructure repair, public safety, or social services. And I would go where I think that the deficiency is in our city, and try to first get available funds from the state and the federal government before we dip into the general fund. And also, I don't really like debt that much. The general fund is the one that throws everybody off because that's where our cuts come from. And I would say that we have a deficiency in public safety in that, and infrastructure repair. I mean, they kind of go hand in hand with the sidewalks being in disrepair. It's also an aesthetics problem, and whatever can help out the west side. And I don't like to be biased about the west side, but it could use all the help we can get.
Jerry, you have a minute to finish up this end of the questions.
I think it's probably fair to tell the audience here this evening what probably my priorities might be. Public safety, it would be number 1. I think we need to have our citizens feel protected, as well as provide them the protection that they want. Infrastructure repair is very vital, and I think that infrastructure repair, if it's done correctly, will stimulate economic development. So infrastructure repair would be ahead of economic development, because you cannot develop without good infrastructure. Those would be my 2 top priorities: public safety, infrastructure repair.
Thank you. Council position 7. Dominick, you have an opportunity to ask Steve a question.
Okay. Steve, could you please describe your private business experience, your direct private business experience, and how it will be an asset to the citizens?
Well, as I mentioned before, working with my father, albeit as a high school student, working at the cinema in my hometown, numerous jobs in between breaks in college. As I mentioned, I was in business with my brother for 7 years in the airplane leasing business. I learned a lot about it, gained a lot of carryover tax credits from it. But I again would argue that working with businesses through on-job training, working with the community to understand how to help them with their businesses in different aspects of their personnel or the primary private sector, using your definition.
Dominick, you have a minute to respond, and then Steve will ask you a question.
I'll pass.
Thank you. Steve, you get to ask Dominick a question.
So, Dominick, you've been off the council for 4 years now. What direction do you see the council heading that you agree with, and what direction do you disagree with?
Thank you for the question. As far as agreement, I think several things have been pointed out this evening. The infrastructure repair and replacement program, I think it's been a wonderful addition to the community. I have chaired that since its inception. So I've continued to work with the Citizens Advisory Group to make that program as good as it has been, and I think it's been just a super program. That's one area of agreement. Another area is some of the street repair that's going on. It's something we worked about and talked about for a long time. Finally have come up with a good program to start addressing that issue. And infrastructure is a major priority. Anytime you have a city that's as old as this, you're always going to have issues. So to begin working on them in a more thorough and direct fashion has been a real plus, and I would hope to continue to help that cause continue. As far as differences, I think they're primarily taxation and budget. I think there's some opportunities in the budget to lessen the impact of tax increases. Last year, there was a $750,000 increase in the utility taxes. Part of that was sold, and I still have the piece of paper at work said it would not affect utility rates. Well, that's malarkey. You've increased the expense $750,000. It has to impact rates. What was meant was it didn't impact them immediately. Now this year we're talking about some very substantial increases in those rates. Some of them justified, some of them caused by a $750,000 per year tax increase that was instituted by the council last year. So I didn't necessarily agree with that. I did offer some options, because one of the things that was frustrating for me when I was on the council, people would always get up and say, well, do my program, go ahead and do mine. Don't worry about somebody else's. But I used to ask the question, and it's part of the reason I think people would get on me, is what do we change then? Because I think it's important to offer those alternatives.
Steve, you have the last minute on this exchange. We're about ready to finish this up. Each candidate was given 2 minutes as a closing statement. Before they do that, I've done a few of these. And part of the rebuttal structure, part of this question is to create sparks. These are 4 of the friendliest, nicest people you're ever going to meet. And I want to compliment you on the goodwill the 4 of you exchanged. I just thought it was delightful. We began initially with Sharon, so Jerry, you get the first 2-minute summary.
Thank you very much. And you know, what I like about Walla Walla is this is the Walla Walla way. I don't think that we have to go on like they do on national television and beat on each other. There are no simple answers to the complex issues that we have. There's always an action by council, there seems to be an equal reaction from the public or from other agencies. I will mention that in my opponent's opening remarks said that I spent too much time probably on working with other jurisdictions out of the jurisdiction or whatever. I do serve on the with the Department of Commerce in Olympia on the Public Works Trust Board. I'm one of 9 people on the Public Works Trust Board. We have in the past helped 39 counties and jurisdictions within that county to get monies for low interest loans to fix utilities and to fix infrastructure. I'm very proud of that service, and we meet 1 day a month in Olympia, and that I think has brought back and been very beneficial to our community in a lot of ways. Projects that I would like to see through to completion, and I didn't have an opportunity to talk about it much, but I think we have to have a fuel reduction in the watershed. We have a fire load of 45, 15 is considered a full load, so we have 3 times a full load up there. We have to look at fuel reduction before it burns. Highway 12 is a continuing process. I want to be able to help with phase 8 of that, and also I want to see the LT2 treatment plant put in place to kill cryptosporidium in our water system. I do not want to overregulate business, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here this evening.
Thank you, Jerry. Sharon, you have 2 minutes to present a final statement.
Jerry was talking about reducing the fuel, and I wanted to say reducing the fuel as I think he was talking about trees, but I want to let you know that I really am a tree person, even though I agreed with Jerry about the clearing of the Mill Creek Trail. It's very dear to me. This is where I walked when I first came to Walla Walla for about 2 years, and it stimulated the writing of my books. You know, it's not, sometimes you just have to go with the real experts on those kinds of things. We have beautiful trees in our city. On the west side, I mean, the west side is absolutely beautiful. If people would walk like down in the area where the what do you call it, Germantown, down there, and it's just breathtaking, all the trees. Anyway, I'm for keeping all the trees we can, and I really feel bad for the citizens that were disappointed with that decision. And I want to say that city council members are not, as you know, professional debaters, and this is a nonpartisan office. What I would do as a city council member, I would listen carefully and impartially, think critically, which means separating fact from fiction, and give feedback. And I thank you all for coming and listening. I thank you for the Chamber of Commerce for putting this on. Thank you.
Thank you. Dominick, you gave the opening the first time. Steve, you get to give the first closing.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you again for your attendance. I have a deep love for Walla Walla. I am in the financial position where I don't need to stay here, but I never gave it a second chance, thought. This is my home, and I plan to live here for many, many years, hopefully. I think you'll find that I am pragmatic in my decision-making, willing to work with the community with a high degree of sensibility, willing to work in a bottom-up approach to governing. There are many issues that we discussed tonight, but there are many, many more that will come before the council over the next 4 years that we probably don't know about. I want you to know that I am open-minded, optimistic about our future. I'm a glass half full kind of person. I want to use my skills, my abilities to bring people together, to collaborate, to come up with as much consensus about the direction of Walla Walla as possible for the benefit of everyone in Walla Walla. And thank you again.
Thanks, Steve. Dominick, you have the very last statement.
Thank you. I'd like to thank again the Chamber, all you who have attended, and you, Bob, for moderating the debate. I'm sorry we weren't feisty enough to really make you work, but it's a pleasure nonetheless. I'm going to ask you for your vote. I want your vote. I think I'm a better choice than my opponent because of my experience. I have 40 years of private sector experience. A business-like approach and thinking would be a good addition to this current council. I have over 30 years working on a variety of city issues. I was a leader in the revitalization of our downtown. I'm extremely proud of that, the improvements that were made. The farmers market, which I attend almost every week with my family, we were told as a group that that would never work. Don't even think about it. You kids don't know what you're doing. I was 30 years old at the time and was very thankful to be referred to as a kid. Wish somebody would do it now, but now I'm too old. I've been involved in some of the most important projects that the city has done or is continuing to do, including community policing, infrastructure improvements, the infrastructure repair replacement plan that I referred to earlier, the Isaacs Avenue improvements, I've been involved in that since its inception, and the expansion of Highway 12, just to name a few. I've worked with the Chamber Public Policy Committee on various issues. Some of the most important issues that we faced were city issues. I was able to provide some insight into the workings of city government that I think helped the group make a better decision. I have over 20 years experience working with the city budget. Many people, including my opponent, have experience working with budgets. The city budget is so large and complex, it can be very difficult to understand. I have the experience to be able to jump right in and continue working on the most important piece of work that is done by the council. Again, Dominick, Elia, position 7, I would appreciate your support.
And in the honest mode that we're in, applause is not a scarce resource, it's renewable, so maybe you ought to contribute some applause to these full-time candidates.
I just want to thank everybody. If you would, one more round of applause for our candidates. I really appreciate you all running and sharing your point of views, because I think it just simply makes a better candidates, better election, better elected officials. I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight, and remember to vote. That's a night. Thanks very much.